and her new book, Rules for Rhinos. Welcome, Cathi.
Hello, Chuck. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Let's say hello to Mike Levine. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Chuck and Kathy. Awesome
There
to be
we
with you.
go. So let's lead
Chuck, I
off
just need
with
to tell you that monologue, I don't think we got your audio on the monologue. We didn't have any audio from you until you brought Kathy on. So I just want you to be aware
really.
of that. But let's continue. Go ahead.
Okay, well,
So let's welcome
that's
Kathy.
okay.
Yeah,
So,
disappointing,
Cathi,
but
let's talk about your rules for rhinos.
Let's do. I'm always game for that one.
Okay, well, tell us about it.
Well, okay, so for the audience who is aware, I started off by writing Rules for Deplorables, a primer for fighting radical socialism. Back in 2019, actually, I can't believe it's been that long. And I really wrote it because I was witnessing so much animosity from the left and the Democrats towards President Trump, and they were playing by the tactics that Saul Alinsky wrote about in his book, blockbuster book, Rules for Radicals, which happens to be the Bible of the left. And a lot of people don't realize that. He even acknowledged Lucifer at the beginning of his book. So it's a really kind of dark, evil place that he goes with his tactics. But they're used by a lot of community organizers. Most of the left, it's like required reading for Democrats. But conservatives don't know that. And so because at one time in my life, way back when I lived in California for a number of years, I became extremely indoctrinated. So I know how it happens. And I read the book. And I was a Democrat and a flaming liberal, I call myself. I can go that as far as that. L. Ross Perot started getting me back to thinking straight about life and about politics. And I became an independent until Trump came down those escalators. And because we're in a primary type of state where we have to be one of the two major parties in order to vote in the primaries, that's when I switched parties to Republican. And I'm about as conservative as they get. For those who know me, would that's what they would say. So when I fell off my ladder from I was a building contractor, and I broke my back and broke my wrist, and I had nothing to do but think and watch the news. And I just got so upset that conservatives weren't fighting harder for Trump. And in fact, in many cases, they were hamstringing him. And so I decided to write Rules for Deplorables in an effort to educate conservatives that these are games that the left is playing against us. Even Trump sometimes says, even today, he'll say, boy, they do some stupid things. And that always makes my ears hurt, because they're not doing stupid things. They're doing well-calculated, intentional tactics in order to destroy our country. So I'm an activist. I've been very, very busy over the last so many years out on the streets, really grassroots, fighting for our country. And many of my supporters from my original book have been begging me to write a sequel, and I just didn't have the time. So I finally, when Trump was reelected, felt like this was the right time, because I was starting to get upset again. And this time I was getting upset over the rhinos. So where my first book really targets the left and the Dems for being our biggest enemies, I believe that's no longer the case. Of course, they're still enemies, and we can't lose sight of them. But they,
Sure.
but now today I see rhinos as the enemy, and that's what I've written about.
There you go. And the last chapter of your book is regarding the Manatee County REC. Could you give us a little information about that?
Sure. I didn't actually intend to write my whole last chapter and dedicate it to the Manatee Republican Executive Committee, which is the county Republican Party in each of our 67 counties here in Florida. However, once I got into researching what actually happened there, after hearing little bits and pieces, I realized that this was a much bigger story than what the news was even making it out to be. So I started interviewing a lot of the players in that Manatee Republican Executive Club and found an explosive story just had to be told. So I dedicated my entire 13th chapter. Alinsky has 13 tactics. I open up one chapter with each of his tactics. And in that chapter, I go into a great bit of detail about what actually happened to them.
Okay. Let's see here. You also have some, I guess you're going to be somewhere tomorrow, and you'd like to tell people about an event tomorrow in the area here in Orlando.
Well, the RPOF, and for those who don't know, that's the Republican Party of Florida. They're the big head honchos. They have a quarterly event. So their next one happens to be tomorrow in Orlando at the Hilton Orlando. And we have put together a group that I'm part of, a coalition called American Patriot Executive Committee, or APEC. We've put together a press conference. And what we're going to do is we have about 11 speakers that are going to be speaking about how each one of us got purged by the Republican Party. These are all fabulous MAGA, America First, grassroots, volunteers from all sorts of professional backgrounds and all different counties in our state. I will be one of the speakers. And all of us will be sharing the story of how we got purged, suspended, kicked out, whatever you want to call it, from the RPOF, who it seems to be on a real hunt to get rid of a lot of the key players in the MAGA movement, and they are destroying Trump's base here in Florida. And we want to bring attention to that and expose it so that that word gets back to Trump and he understands what's going on. If he's fine with that, okay. I don't think he will be.
Yeah, so that would lead me to a little more personal things. You've had a little bit of a dust up with the RPOF, and I think you wanted to share a few things regarding that. You've got some, I guess they had some grievances against you, and you have some comments, and you're concerned about that. Why don't you lead me into where you want to go here?
Well, it all came kind of out of the blue, Chuck. I actually reached out to Mark Cross, who is the chairman of the RPOF Grievance Committee. And the reason I did is after I did all my research, I heard one recurrent theme from all of the key players in that Manatee. And people have to understand that Manatee REC about 2 years ago was majority probably establishment. And according to Trent Wayman, who led it seems that him and his group of MAGA people started bringing in America Firsters to the REC until the point where it actually became about 70, according to him, 75% MAGA. And I guess that was enough to get the attention of the RPOF. And then they went on to successfully get very conservative commissioners or candidates on the board, the commissioners board, and again brought the attention of the RPOF because every one of their carefully selected and placed establishment candidates lost. So I'm sure that didn't make them too happy. But one of the recurrent themes I heard was that the chairwoman of that REC was taking money out of the treasury without getting the approval of the members. They were all in agreement. There was no disagreement about it. Everyone told me the same story that was very close to that whole unfolding. And so the other thing they told me that I was shocked about is that not one person from the RPOF Grievance Committee reached out to them, because how all this started is that they filed a grievance against the chairwoman to stop her from taking unapproved funds. And it sure sounded reasonable to me. So she wouldn't stop taking the funds and spending it on things that were not approved. So they filed a grievance, and I read the grievance. It was absolutely incredibly professionally done, with attachments and everything. I understood it perfectly well. And so what happened was, the grievance committee itself went through the grievance, and then they came back with a decision that had nothing to do at all with that chairwoman taking money. What it had to do with was a special meeting that was called to discuss changing the rules so that she couldn't take the money. Well, what is the RPOF decision? The grievance decision was simply that the special meeting that was called did not follow the rules. And I asked the people who set up the meeting, well, what rules did you follow? And they said, we called Mark Cross and had him walk us through what we should do to set up this special meeting. And so everything just sounded bizarre. So I reached out to Mark Cross on August 18th. And I've known Mark for years. I really like Mark, but I needed to understand what happened there. And I said, hey, Mark, I got a quick question for you. I'm writing a new book. And of course, he asked me, well, what's the title? And I figured that would probably be a giveaway. So I said, I'm keeping that close to the vest. But I'm writing about the Manatee REC. And he acted as though he didn't really remember any of the details, which is kind of hard to believe, because they eventually suspended the REC, and that was unprecedented. They'd never done that before. So I told him that what I wanted to find out was why the grievance that the Manatee folks sent in, that grievance, not one person who had a hand in that grievance was interviewed by the grievance committee. And I wanted to know, how did they reach their conclusion without interviewing any of the key witnesses? That's what baffled me the most. And he said he would get back to me, but he never did. I told him, I said, look, you can either give me information that my readers, it would make sense to my readers, or you don't. And if you don't, I'm going to have to write that you didn't get back to me, which is what I eventually wrote. So that was all on the 18th of August. Skip forward to the 29th of September, when I received the grievances against me, which came as a complete shock. No warning, no nothing. They were filed by Bill Helmick, who you guys just had on your show, the executive director of the RPOF. And I never met the man. So, whatever grievances he had against me were secondhand information to begin with. And why it didn't come through my local REC, folks, I've been a member, a precinct committee woman for 10 years almost. So it was surprising to me that my local REC didn't come and talk to me about the 4 grievances that eventually got filed. At any rate, apparently 1 week after I reached out to Mark Cross, on August 25th, he gathered together the grievance committee of the RPOF to discuss Bill Helmick's grievances against me and see where they should go with it. On the 21st of September, I released my book on Amazon. And then the 29th, I get the grievances that are now up for anybody to see, and my replies on my website, rulesfordeplorablesbook.com. under the menu drop down Rules for Rhinos. I put them all up there in PDF format, so you can take a look at them. But they were absolutely shocking to me when I read them. Everything they complained about me were things that my president, Donald J. Trump, has told me and all of you we should be doing. So it was very baffling. That's where that's ended. And of course I replied, Chuck, but
you did say you wanted to kind of work on these grievances. So grievance number 1 is that you repeatedly referred to fellow Republicans as rhinos, including during public events, etc. And your reply to that?
I sure did. Yeah, and mainly, and most of my replies were, wait a second, guys, this is stuff our own President Donald J. Trump has been doing. And in my reply, I included a quote from Trump, because what they quoted me from a speech that I gave shortly prior to that, and that a local media picked up. And my quote actually was, hey, we don't just have rhinos in Washington, D.C. We have them right here in Florida in our own backyard. Well, I guess the RPOF took that personally. I didn't name them. I didn't point to them, but they must have thought I was talking about them. And, you know, now with 2020 hindsight, they kind of proved my point, I guess you could say. But sure, so I said, hey, President Trump, this is what I write, has called certain Republicans rhinos on many occasions. Shortly after the stolen election of 2020 and the J6 Fedsurrection, our president stated that he does, quote, not support rhinos and fools, and it is not their right to use my likeness or image to raise funds. So much money is being raised and completely wasted by people that do not have the GOP's best interests in mind, close quote. And I end that with saying, apparently the RPOF, under the current leadership, does not agree with our own president. And I included the source for my quote, as I do in my book. I have got 400 footnotes in my book. I'm really good at that.
Yeah, let me just, I know my buddy Mike Levine is just loves to listen to our guests speak, but I was just wondering, Mike, if you had any comments before I get on to the next thing here. And now you don't have volume.
That's because I was muted. Yeah, so the heading on that particular bullet point in their grievance was divisive rhetoric. Well, when in this country's history was divisive rhetoric a problem? And as you and I both, Chuck, pointed out when Mr. Helmick was on our show Tuesday, that isn't it better to sit down with your adversaries and let's talk it out? But the fact of the matter is, if we all really want to know the truth, the Republican Party of Florida is not interested in hearing what you have to say, period. So for me personally, I'm very interested in talking to the people that I disagree with. And I think we actually established that Tuesday with Mr. Helmick, Chuck, that, there's a lot of going on with the Republican Party of Florida, not just obviously with what happened with Cathi and, Trent Wayman and Jackie Heisey and the whole group, Robin Lum, the whole group, right? But I'm saying, as we told Mr. Helmick on Tuesday, these are your best people. Right. I mean, if you want people that can get things done and articulate a message, you need these people on your team. And I'm saying to you that, again, many of the comments that Mr. Helmick made were just diversions from addressing the problem head on. But I will suggest also to my friends who don't believe that we need to talk to the Republican Party of Florida, I just challenge all of my friends who believe that to show me the path to victory. I guess Trent Wayman would say that a third party, the new political party that he started, could be the only way to victory. And I'm not ruling that out. I'm just saying that, and again, keeping in mind that we use the word Republican in the name of our organizations, which is not owned by the Republican Party of Florida, as was determined by the courts, obviously, but we got to figure out who's the rhino here and who isn't. And I'll just leave it at that. Right.
I was talking to a House representative not too long ago, who basically told me that the word Republican means something different in the Republican Party than anywhere else in his word universe, and possibly he doesn't realize that most of the Republican electorate lives in the universe. And so if they have a definition that's different from ours, that might possibly lead to the concept, because, we all know what a Republican is. And a Republican talks about government for the people. If you're not governing for the people, you're not governing in a Republican format. If you're governing for yourself, or if you're governing for special interests, if you're governing for world order, you're not a Republican. And that's just the reality. And I'm wondering if maybe I've been beginning to use the term left wing of the Republican Party in hopes that they begin to understand that whatever their definition is, it's on the left of the rest of us. So,
So if you don't mind me just jumping in here real quick, at the end of the
sure.
day, when we're not willing to listen to people who disagree with us, this is the classic Donald Trump, as we pointed out with Mr. Helmick. The president has adversarial media organizations in the Oval Office on a regular basis, and Charlie Kirk told people on college campuses, the people who disagree with me come to the front of the line. And I would highly recommend that the Republican Party of Florida embrace that mentality, Chuck.
Yes, and yeah, we can continue to go on this route, but
Let's go on point number 2. Let's move on to Cathy's point number 2 on her grievance.
well, you have yeah, your point number 2, grievance, I guess. Is that what we're looking for? That would be
Yeah, they had 4 points.
I
What
think
was point number 2?
her affiliation with Defend Florida is the second grievance.
Right.
And
Let's talk about that.
Your reply says grievance statement shows bias based on opinions not unlike those of rhinos. So we're back to rhinos again. Cathy, what would you have to say
That was
about
my
that?
reply, Chuck, but yeah, that was my reply, what you just what you
Yeah,
were
yeah.
just kind of reading there. But their grievance number 2 was an affiliation with Defend Florida. And this really is where a lot of the division between the Republican Party and MAGA began back in 2021, when so many America Firsters came out and said, we have to protest this election. The election was stolen. I was at a speech last night with over 150 people, and I asked the question, who thinks in here that the election was stolen? And 100% of them did. I mean, this is still very heavy on the minds of America Firsters. So they are saying here in the grievance number 2 that because I am, quote, actively participating in and promoting events organized by Defend Florida, which I am the ambassador for the state of and have been for 5 years. Why didn't they pull this out back in 2021? I guess 4 years. They say a group known for canvassing voter rolls and promoting unsubstantiated election fraud claims. You know what? If they're unsubstantiated, why is it that our own SOE, Supervisor of Elections, our SOS, Secretary of State, our local RECs, our RPOF have all refused to look at our findings? They've never looked at our findings. So how can they say they're unsubstantiated to begin with? But this really irked them from the beginning, that we were trying to do something about finding out. And we actually sent canvassers all over the state in 35 counties and found 20% of our voter rolls had anomalies on them. People born in 1899, people in an empty lot, people in a gas station using their address. Folks, we do have a problem, but even when you interviewed Bill Helmick, I had to laugh when he said the gold standard, because if we're the gold standard, boy, I would hate to see the other states and what shapes their voter rolls are in. But I think we're in denial, our leadership, because for them to look at our findings and see that we actually did prove that the voter rolls were 20% needing cleanup, they'd have to admit we're not the gold standard, wouldn't they? So, and this one directly has to do with the Constitution, where the first one was the right of freedom of speech. This one is the right of freedom of assembly. I can't assemble with Defend Florida now. It's just ludicrous.
I couldn't agree more. And then if you really want to get into it and you listen to what Mr. Helmick said, we asked him specifically, was the 2020 election stolen? And his response was that the 2020 election was legally stolen from Trump in 2020. That's what he said. But again, and just so you know, Cathi, we have an amazing group of patriots here in Lake County who did a ton of work. The
Yes.
Lake County Election Integrity and Voter Protection Coalition did a ton of work. And then some of my associates up in the villages with the Trump Club in the villages and, put all that information together. And we sent a 26-page report to Cord Bird, which was part of the impetus for starting the Office of Election Crimes and Security with Peter Antonacci, who just coincidentally died on in the damn Capitol, right? After having a meeting with the governor and the Secretary of State and the Deputy Chief of Staff. And all of a sudden, he's dead in a hallway in the Capitol and can't get emergency services for 45 minutes in the Capitol. Okay. And so the next step becomes, they don't address mail-in ballots, which are still a major concern. If you don't believe me, ask Donald Trump. And they don't address the fragility of the machines, and again, keeping in mind that David Ramba, who Evan Power works for, is the executive director of the Florida Association of Supervisors of Elections Incorporated, which is funded by Dominion voting machines. So, the idea that you come on and just say, without getting into the specifics, which we called him out on all of that. We went through Evan's position as a lobbyist working for Ramba. We came up with, now I thought that Rambo was the state committee man from Leon, but that's Evan Powers, actually the state committee man from Leon. And we talked to Mr. Helmick about his homesteaded property in Leon County and his voter registration, which is in Madison County. And of course, Mr. Helmick serves as a state committee man from Madison County. But the question really becomes, why does the executive director of the RPOF need to be a state committee man, right? I mean, he honestly, it's just another example of just the RPOF doing every single thing in their power to control what happens at the Republican Party of Florida, which is an autocratic management style, which is silencing Republican voters. And that's what it's all about. And we can go this tit for tat back and forth. And as I told Mr. Helmick, let's get off the legalistic part of it, Bill. Let's just talk about our heart. Let's say what is in your heart. And the fact of the matter is, when you start lining up all this stuff to your advantage, and that's exactly what they're doing. I don't even think they would deny that. You're intentionally silencing Republican voters. So if you're not interested in hearing from Republican voters, then I would suggest that you're not a Republican, as my friend Chuck Benoit points out over and over and over again. And I'll shift the floor back over to Chuck.
Yes.
Thanks.
And we are running out of time. There were two other concepts we were hoping to get across. I'm going to give you the floor, Cathi. You had a correction about something Bill Helmick had to say, and then you have some upcoming speeches. So could you address both of those as we close out?
Yeah, well, the third grievance actually had to do with the fact that I founded a group in my county called Pinellas Watchdogs. And I founded that, quite frankly, because the local REC was not doing the stuff that we felt like they should be doing, and we wanted to do more. And they really berated us for all the work that we did on the election integrity stuff, but they weren't doing anything. So that's why we formed that. So I guess you can't form your own group. See, I didn't have the word Republican in my Pinellas Watchdogs group, did I? But they still found a way to file a grievance against me for that. The fourth grievance, believe it or not, this is unbelievable. All of them are really, is because I was a campaign manager for a J6er, a local J6er, who I talked into running for office back then. And he was actually sitting in jail, unjustly accused. He hadn't even had his day in court yet. So they're saying that I had bad judgment because I was helping this gentleman run for office to bring exposure to his cause. And because there was a Marxist incumbent in that district. You think the Republican Party helped me? No, they did everything they could to sabotage my efforts in helping him. And now they filed a complaint against me for my efforts with that campaign. So none of it makes sense. Everything that they complained against me, again, are things that most America Firsters have done or would do or agree with, and Trump himself has encouraged us to do on a local level. We will not stop trying to get Trump's agenda passed, because it's certainly not being done by our RPOF or many of our local RECs.
Mike?
Yeah, Chuck, if you don't mind. So it's really interesting, right? The RPOF comes after Cathi for starting her Pinellas Watchdog group. But David Ramba, through his consulting association, of course, I understand that consultants, donate cross-party lines. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, with Evan Power working for Ramba Consulting and Ramba donating to Democrats in Broward County, if I'm not mistaken, because I saw the campaign finance reports showing that Ramba Consulting donates to Democrats. It's just really just so hypocritical, and to come after all of the people. And I'm saying to you as well, I was at a Florida Republican Assembly meeting on Monday night. And they asked, what would we have to do in order to reconcile with the Republican Party of Florida, which I'm in favor of doing that. I think we need to, and unless you can win elections outside of the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, we've got to fix this relationship that we have. But at the end of the day, I gave a couple of bullet points on what we would have to do in order to reconcile with the RPOF. But the third bullet point is actually reinstate everybody that's been kicked out. They need to reinstate everyone who's been kicked out. If you really want to get to the bottom of it, you want to have a unified party, then, listen to what America First Republicans have to say and reinstate everybody to the positions they were kicked out of. Cathi, you want to speak to that?
I sure do. Thanks for everything you just said. I'm so infuriated. Yes, I can't wait for our press conference tomorrow, because we are having people speak like me who have been unfairly kicked out of the party. Dave Kalin, you had him on. He's doing a lot of undercover work for trying to figure out all these weird relationships that you just spoke about. We have Trent Wayman. These people, Robin Lum, who had the lawsuit going on.
Huge.
You had him on just recently.
Powerhouse. Robin's a powerhouse. This guy's an amazing guy. Why would you not want him on your team? I don't get it.
You know what? This is the amazing thing. The whole team that formed for Defend Florida, and probably your groups out there that were doing things about election integrity as well, and the ones you're going to hear speak tomorrow, folks. By the way, you can email us at joinapec@protonmail.com. But all the people that you see speaking, the grassroots who have been doing all the work on the ground for the past 4 years, I can tell you, they are the most professional. They're corporate CEO, retired DOD engineers. These are business owners. These are people, the cream of the crop of our society. And then when I look at the RPOF, I find that most of them are, government workers. They really have had very little experience in the business world with their own businesses or what have you. But the MAGA people, the America Firsters, are a threat to them, I believe, for that reason. And we have got to start challenging them a lot more. I just heard from Rick Lacey, who also got kicked out. I believe he's going to be a speaker for us. He's out of Brevard, the chairman there, that he was part of the vote that he voted it down. A quick vote that went through that upped their salaries, Evan Power and Bill Helmick, from $120,000 a year to $200,000 a year, and it was jammed through. This has got to stop. We're in real trouble here. We have to get this information to President Trump if we're going to save his base in Florida, and if we're not, we're going back to blue.
Well, we are
very sad reality.
Out of time.
And just let's make sure we go before we close, right? Let's just make sure we all understand that David Ramba is the executive director for the Florida Association of Supervisors of Elections Incorporated. And have you heard one supervisor of elections, 67 supervisors of elections in the state of Florida? Have you had one person come out and address this? Of course, the mouthpiece of the whole thing is Alan Hayes right here in Lake County, right? So they go to him, an experienced legislator who, voices their talking points. He's their communications guy. But they really don't, and of course you got to give credit to Chris Jursky as well, because Chris Jursky was very involved with the whole Defend Florida and has his own, platform. So, but amazing people, right? And honestly and truly, there's no other conclusion you can draw than the conclusion that they don't want to solve the problem, Cathi.
Yes.
Well, and why don't they? That's the bigger question,
That's a
is
big
there
question.
just so much, because the Manatee REC whole situation was all about developers. That the
Right.
people of Manatee did not want the developers to have control there, and they voted them out, which is the way it should be. But the RPOF,
Right.
they wanted to jam those people in there.
Cathi,
Got it. Chuck.
why don't we close up with a few of your upcoming speeches, places where you're going to be? Why don't you tell us where we can find you, and we're gonna have to shut it down.
Gee, I'm glad you I'm glad you asked that, Chuck, because I don't pre-announce on any podcast where I'm going to be, because I've had people calling me presidents of chartered clubs, Republican clubs in various different counties that have already confirmed me as a speaker, because their local RECs, from pressure from the RPOF, have told them if they have me come speak, they will lose their charters. This isn't new. I've been facing this here in my own county for 4 years, but now the RPOF has declared war on me. So if you would like me to come speak and share more of this with you and support the MAGA America First over the rhinos, you can get a hold of me directly at Rules for Rhinos, that's FOR, RINOS, Rules for Rhinos at gmail.com. And I'll be more than happy to come out and speak to your group.
Mike, any final comments?
I just think we're at a really dangerous crossroads here. We saw what happened in elections across the, country, the Proposition 50 in California. We just watched this gentleman in New York got elected to be the mayor of New York, Mamdani. We saw the slippage of Republican votes in New Jersey and Virginia. And I'm saying, as we pointed out to Mr. Helmick when he was on, the gravy train could end. And what are you going to do when the gravy train ends? And, you find yourself needing to again, and keep in mind that even increased voter registrations did not end with increased voter turnout. So registrations is not the name of the game. I mean, yes, it's important, but it's not the end all. We got to get Republican voters to turn out. And the fact of the matter is there was a major enthusiasm gap in the elections that happened on Tuesday. And I'm saying to you right now, to everybody who is on the establishment side or the left-wing side, as Chuck Benoit puts it, of the Republican Party of Florida, needs to remember that, good times come and go. And we need all America First Republicans at the table. My recommendation is reinstate. Everyone has been kicked out, and let's all sit around the table and unify the Republican Party around America First principles who are set forth by our President Donald J. Trump. And if they want to do something about it in Washington, D.C., codify every executive order into law. Chuck Benoit.
Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Cathi, and thank you all for tuning into our twice weekly live stream. Please follow us on Facebook at Restoring Our American Republic, or check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic -ROAR. Like and share the program. And remember, if you're unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. So see you next time. And meanwhile, God bless you. God bless President Donald J. Trump, and God bless America.